Hi guys, Sarah here. So this is week 5, discussion 1, and I would have to say The Myth of a Superhero, that book was the one that stuck out to me the best as a book. It made me understand exactly what we were talking about, and it actually made me understand the Batman book a little bit better once I read some entries in that book. But chapter 8, which is the chapter I was assigned last week, I think that's the one that stuck out with me the most because I feel like I actually learned something new. Um, in the 80s, like I said last week, that's when they started flipping the supervillain. The villain, instead of being a villain you caught on the street and turned into the sheriff, the villain now became the sheriff. So power and leadership turned into the villains in the 80s. It almost seems like the comic books started focusing more on real life villains instead of their fictitious villains. A couple of examples that the book gave was the Rambo movie, the movie Unforgiven with Clint Eastwood. Both of those movies are good examples. But if you actually go back and start looking at comic books, and to be honest, I even noticed the other day when I was watching the older cartoons, everything has changed since the 80s. The cartoons these days are almost just like the comic books. They kind of go hand in hand in the aspect of the fact that they both are now showing villains to be pretty much anybody. Can be your mom, could be a dad, it could be a sheriff, it could be a local politician. And back before the 80s, they didn't really dip into politics and they didn't dip into stuff like that. It was pretty plain and simple. Your villains were fictitious people, not real people, and your villains were actual bad guys that you turned over to the good guys, not people portraying to be good guys that are actually bad guys. So once I read that chapter last week, I kind of paid attention this week as I was reading social media, watching television, all that kind of stuff, and you can definitely see the difference. And I've noticed, of course, since social media came about, that you see a lot more stuff now than you were probably sheltered from before, but I didn't realize it went all the way back to the 80s until I read that chapter last week.